bonjour and welcome to Mr. C History. Now I'm in France once again, specifically in the peninsula town of Quiberon in Brittany, and behind me there is the majestic Quiberon Bay, where on the November the 20th, 1759, the Battle of Quiberon Bay took place, the battle which I think is one of the most significant battles in British history. So come along and join me and I'll explain why. Let's first and foremost set the scene. When was this battle taking place? In which war? Well, it was during the 7 Years' War, a war that Winston Churchill said was the First World War. And indeed, it's a pretty major conflict. It involved Britain allied with Prussia, maybe what we would call Germany now, not quite the same, against pretty much everyone else in Europe. It was all about global dominance, a battle between the British and the French. Britain was this huge emerging power, right ready to take control of the world. France was trying to cling on to its powers, and they were engaging battles everywhere: South America, North America, Africa, Asia, in Europe, and of course here in France. Now, by 1759, it'd be fair to say nobody was really winning the 7 years. Well, nobody was probably losing it either. It was just a bit of a nothing war. But one thing that happened was that they had built up a lot of their naval reserves. A lot of their boats they'd been making more and more and more. Now, France, in order to get the war going, hatched a slightly, maybe you can look at it now, slightly mad plan. They said, zut alors, let's invade Britain. Oh my goodness, they were saying, let's do it, let's go for Britain and we can take it, we can stop this emerging empire before it even starts. Obviously the Brits, they get whiff of this campaign, so they say, right, we need to beat the French. Specifically, we need to defeat the French Navy. So what actually happened in the course of the battle? Well, the French commander was a man called Admiral Conflans, and he actually was based in Brest, over the other side of Brittany, and he wanted to meet up with some other French boats that were in Vent, just at the top end of the Quiberon Bay right behind me. Now, his aim, of course, was to meet with all these boats and then launch that invasion of Britain. But Britain have got wind of this, and their commander, Sir Edward Hawke, was waiting for him at the entrance of Quiberon Bay, just over there. So an element of surprise there from Edward Hawke. Now the other thing, of course, is the 20th of November 1759, when the battle took place, it wasn't a beautiful sunny day like it is now. It was dark and rainy and very, very windy. So the British had surprise on their side. They also had the weather. So I know there's always little skirmishes and breakouts of the fights, but significantly, the significant moment was when one of the main French ships, the Soleil, sank. The British cannon was simply too much for it. And their smaller, sort of 50 cannons that could fire at a faster rate than the French. And so that ship sank. That meant the other French boats panicked a little bit, and they were brushed up, pushed in to this bit. Now, Conflans wanted to keep the battle as much as he could nearer the entrance of the bay, because the weather was a little bit calmer out there, and crucially he didn't want to fix up on the rocks here. But that is exactly what happened. Hawke and his other British boats managed to push the French into the bay, and the bad weather pushed their boats and they ran aground on many of the rocks around here. So a decisive British victory. What were the immediate consequences? Well, this was known as the Annus Mirabilis 1759 in British history. Made lots of major other naval battles won. Quiberon Bay was the main one over the French, of course, but it created this huge morale boost for the British. It essentially ended the threat from France of invasion of Britain, which is very good, and it ended the French dominance of the Navy, and it propelled the British dominance of the Navy. More on that soon. It also essentially led eventually to Britain on being on the winning side of the 7 Years' War. Well, it's the long-term consequences I'm more interested in. With that control of the Atlantic, Britain controls the Atlantic for the next 150 years, and it launches the golden age of British naval and maritime dominance. We don't have to talk much about the significance of that. It's the slave trade, empire, America, English language spreading around the world, democracy spreading around the world, Christianity spreading around the world. Whichever way you want to look at it, it is very impactful, Britain's control of the seas. My view is that here at Quiberon Bay created the British Empire, created the states, Australia, New Zealand, America. Maybe I'm going too far here, but the idea of what Britain is and it was ability to dominate the world navally started here because they pushed out their main rival, France. Maybe I'm pontificating too much. Also long-term consequences. Unfortunately, France, their naval ambitions were suppressed quite a lot, not really brought forward again until Napoleon 50 or 60 years later. Also, the impact of global trade. I've mentioned the slave trade. Britain and its control of the seas increases global trade, and the introduction of all the crops, the tobacco, potatoes, spices, etc., which had been developing, of course, but Britain's control of that market meant that it's going to flourish. Did it all start here at Quiberon Bay? Essentially, my view is that the Battle of Quiberon Bay is more than just a minor skirmish and clash between Britain and France. It is the start, the shaping of the modern world, the world that we understand. I think really, you could argue started here. Well, I'm certainly arguing that. Well, there you go, Quiberon Bay. Let me know what you think, whether there was a more significant battle in British history. I'm happy to debate that in the comments there. As always, please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Au revoir.